And of course, welcome and good evening, and thank you for spending your Monday evening with us. My name is Swati Meshram. I'm the planning manager with the City of Buena Park. As you know, we're talking about Buena Park and the housing in Buena Park over the next 8 years tonight. And the purpose of the meeting is to get your input on what that should look like so it can inform our housing element update, which is undergoing, it's being written and drafted right now. Before we got too deep into the presentation, I wanted to take a moment and say hello to some of the dignitaries who are here present today. So if you could maybe wave or say hi. I know Mayor Connor Trout is present. Do we see him?
Yep, just observing. Excited
Okay.
to see the community feedback. It's going to do a lot of help for council. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And Mayor Pro Tem Sunny Park is here as well.
Oh, hi.
Thank you. We have Councilmember Art Brown. Councilmember Beth Swift. And I think I saw her log in. And we also have Councilmember, oh, there she is. And Councilmember Susan Sani.
Good evening.
Good evening. We also have planning commissioners. I'm not sure if I saw the chair login this evening. Jim Schultz, if you're here, Chair. Okay. Vice Chair Pradeep Desai. And Planning Commissioner Johnny Kanji. I saw him for sure.
Hi, everyone. Good evening.
Wonderful. And then we also have our city manager, Aaron Franz.
Good evening, everyone.
And our brand new community development director, Matt Folks.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Great. So you've already met Diane when you logged in. She was speaking with all of us, and she's the city's consultant. She's been working on this housing element project with us, along with her team, since I want to say March of this year. We've already conducted a planning commission and a city council joint study session. We also have an online survey available that you can fill out if you haven't filled it out already. It's available on our housing element website. And then tonight's meeting, of course, as Diane mentioned, there are a couple of different ways we are seeking your input. There will be some polling questions that you will see as she talks to us about what is housing element, when is housing element, and why is housing element. Those polling questions will be available for you to fill out even after tonight's presentation. So if you want to take a look at them tomorrow or day after, you can do that. And then toward the end of the session tonight, we will break out into smaller meeting rooms where we would like to get some direct feedback from you. So with that, I would like to hand it over to Diane Bathgate from RRM. Diane, if you could introduce your team to us as well, please.
Great. Thank you, Swati. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. Again, I'm Diane Bathgate, a principal with RRM Design Group, and I have as part of my team here tonight, Brady Woods and Rachel Rayner and Nancy Bergato helping us with the workshop. As well, we are working together with Veronica Tam and Associates, housing element expert. So wanted to just share who the team members that are part of the workshop tonight. Next slide. Now, this is just a brief presentation for our Zoom meeting tonight. Many of you may already be familiar with Zoom and its features, but we wanted to point out, as Swati previously mentioned, there's the mute function, mute and unmute. And we ask that you be on mute during the presentation and the polling exercise. And then at the end of that, we'll have the opportunity to break out into smaller groups. And we ask that you unmute it at that time. and engage and provide some additional feedback that we may not have covered in the survey polling feature. You can leave your video on or off. For the chat function, you can include questions as we go through the presentation if you'd like, and we'll pause periodically to answer questions that are raised. And we ask that for now, no raised hand feature, since for the presentation, as we'll have that opportunity more during the smaller breakout rooms. Thank you. Next slide. So for tonight's agenda, we've already had some introductions, and we're going to walk through what is the housing element. And for folks that may not be familiar with what a housing element is, then we'll have an overview of the housing element contents and process, a little bit of information on some demographic information and trends on Buena Park today. Also, we'll be talking about the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, or RHNA, which you may or may not have heard a lot about. It's how we plan for future housing capacity as designated by the state and local agencies. We'll also review the sites inventory analysis and opportunity areas, some of the preliminary information, and we'd like further input on that in the breakout rooms. And we'll talk about next steps, and then we'll have the opportunity to have more of a dialogue at the end of the meeting. Thank you. So for our polling exercise, we wanted to pause on this slide that using your phone or your home computer, you can log into slido.com, SLIDO.com. And there's two options. You can type in hashtag Buena Park HEU as shown on the left-hand side, or you can scan the QR code, the symbol on the right-hand side of the screen to bring up the survey. We'll take a minute just for folks to get oriented on that. We have a couple of initial questions on the next few slides. So hoping that you'll enjoy that part of the workshop tonight. We'll be able to receive immediate feedback and results as we walk through each of the questions, which is fun to see some of the trends and what people are thinking about tonight. We'll also have this information on each of the survey question slides. So if you don't get it right this minute, we'll be providing that in other opportunities and other slides as we go through the presentation. So here are the first two polling questions. How did you hear about this workshop? There's a city website, city Facebook, or other social media, other local sources. We'll wait a beat if there's any more takers.
Diane, it looks like we have about 30 participants in the meeting, but just as a reminder, this will be accessible after tonight's meeting. So if for whatever reason you're unable to, maybe you're driving or whatnot, and you can't look at the screen or complete the survey, this will be accessible on the city's website for about a week or so after tonight's presentation. And please feel free to share it with friends, family, and neighbors.
Mm-hmm. And the presentation will also be posted online as well. All right, let's move to the next one, I think. Have you participated in previous housing element processes? Yes, no, not sure. Looks like most people are familiar with housing elements. Almost split, but slightly more folks have been involved in past housing elements. Great. Right, let's move on to the next question.
Diane, I just wanted to take a quick second and pause. I think there's a couple people having issues with the code.
Okay,
So if you type in SLI Slido.com and the hashtag and you type in Buena Park, HEU, that should do it, or you can scan this QR code.
so this third question is, do you rent, own a home, and or rental property within the city of Buena Park? Choose all that apply. I rent within the city. I'm a homeowner within the city. I own residential rental property within the city, or other.
New forklift and the fire ready.
It looks like a majority of responses are other, which may be organizations or folks interested in this process. It's about half and half regarding either renting or owning within the city. And then there's also a percentage of folks that own residential rental property within the city of Buena Park. Thank you for participating. Oh, a few more homeowners there. Keep it up for another second or so. More folks are getting the hang of it. Great. Well, thank you, everyone. And now this slide talks about what is the housing element. And the housing element is one of 7 required elements of the general plan. And the general plan is it's required of all cities and counties in the state of California. And it's essentially a policy document addressing the future development and issues, how to address issues in land use over the course of a period of time. And the housing element is one of 7 required elements of this long-term policy blueprint for the city. The housing element is an assessment of housing needs and how to best accommodate existing and future housing needs. It's required to be updated every 8 years by California statute, by state law. And the deadline for this update for this cycle, the 6th cycle is what it's called, is October 15th of this year. And there's also a 120-day grace period that's allowed. The housing element update is reviewed for compliance by the state of California, the State Department of Housing and Community Development. And you may hear us refer to it as HCD throughout the presentation, but this is the department at the state of California that reviews and ensures that housing elements are in compliance with state law. Thank you, Rachel. Next slide. Yep, there we go. So the goals and objectives for the housing element update is to accommodate projected housing demand as mandated by the state of California with a regional housing needs assessment, or RHNA. Policies and programs focus on preserving existing affordable housing, improving the safety and quality of housing, facilitating housing development for all income levels and household types, and promoting fair housing for all. Those are the main goals of the housing element update. Now, there are some benefits with complying with the state requirements for the housing element update. And those are, there's a presumption of a legally adequate housing element in courts, reduced risk of legal challenge. It's also to maintain eligibility for state housing and transportation grant funding. The state is ramping up available funding for housing programs and other programs that are related to housing, including transportation and other topics. So it keeps the city in the mix for being eligible for grant funding. And the city can avoid some potential penalties, such as a carryover of the regional needs assessment, housing needs assessment. Instead of adding on to the numbers, projected numbers, if we're not in compliance, we don't have larger numbers to dwelling unit capacity that we need to plan for with the next cycle. Now I'm going to pause just for a second for the interpreters to keep up. I know it's a lot of work, so we might take a beat. Go to the next slide, please, Rachel, and then we'll pause for a second. Okay, let them catch up and catch their breath. This slide provides an overview of the housing element update process, and it's essentially broken out into several phases. There's the housing needs assessment, looking at what the housing needs are, what are the demographic trends. Then we work on drafting the housing element update and its programs. Which is where we're at now. And once the draft is completed of this updated housing element, it's submitted to the state, the Housing and Community Development Department for review, and we will receive comments back and make any edits or provide additional information to meet state law. And then it'll be going to public hearings this fall before the Planning Commission and City Council for adoption. And then the state will review, HCD will review the document for certification, making sure that it's an adequate document and certified by the state. And throughout this process, we have opportunities for community engagement. And once the housing element is certified, it covers the next 8 years, as mentioned. And the city has 3 years for implementation of any rezoning programs. Those would need to take place within those first 3 years. Thank you, Rachel. Next slide. So for community engagement and outreach opportunities, so far we've conducted stakeholder interviews with a number of different folks related to their affordable housing advocacy groups, service providers for special needs such as homelessness, housing developers, affordable housing developers, market rate housing folks, the school district, and another complement of folks that are interested in housing issues in Buena Park. We also conducted a joint City Council and Planning Commission study session in April. And as mentioned earlier, we have an online housing needs survey that's currently available. And we encourage you, if you haven't taken it, it'll be up for another week or so. And we ask that you take a few moments to fill it out so we can hear more of what your concerns might be or suggestions, and we can make sure to include that in the housing element update process. So I encourage you to go to the city's website and check it out and share that information with your friends and neighbors so we can get get a broad base of feedback to inform the housing element update. Then, of course, we have our community workshop this evening, June 28th, and we'll also have public review and adoption hearings later this year on the public review draft of the document. And the public review draft of the housing element update will also be available this summer for review and comment. Next slide. So we want to pause on this slide. This provides the information for that community needs survey that's available on the city's website. It's available in English, Korean, and Spanish. The links are provided here, or you could just go onto the city's website and go to the page with the housing element update information. It's also included in the chat, which Rachel has kindly posted, and it's going to be available through another week or so. And again, we encourage you to take the survey. Maybe pause on the slide for just a second. And the website link again is in the chat if you want to check it out that way too. All right, moving on to the next slide. So we wanted to provide a little bit of background on Buena Park today. What are some of the demographic characteristics and trends? And this slide talks about the number of homes in Buena Park right now. There's a little over 25,000 homes, dwelling units in Buena Park, and how it's split out by different type. It's probably not a surprise that the majority, about 57%, is a single family dwelling type. There's also single family attached homes at about 8%. Multifamily units, smaller scale projects, 2 to 4 units are a little over 6, I think that's 6%. And then multifamily units that are larger, 5 or more units per building, is at a little under 26%. And mobile homes round that out a little under 2% as part of the housing stock within Buena Park today. And these statistics are derived from the State of California Department of Finance. Next slide. So income distribution is an important consideration when planning for, when looking at existing housing opportunities and planning for future housing opportunities. And incomes are generally broken down into extremely low, very low, low, moderate, and above moderate categories. And it's based on a percentage of the area average median income. Right now, the percentages are about 18% of Buena Park of the housing is for households that are in the extremely low category, about 16% in the very low category, about 19% in the low category, about 13% in the moderate category, and the largest category at 34% is above moderate income category. Next slide. Now, demographic trends for Buena Park, I think this part's interesting, where the total population for Buena Park has increased about 8% over the last 20 years. I mean, excuse me, last 20 years, yes. And the household size has stayed relatively stable, not much change at 0%. And then renters have increased from 42.9% to 45.1%, while homeownership has decreased slightly in the diametrically opposite direction by the same amount. And the fastest growing age group, which may not be a surprise, is 55 to 64 years old. It's increased about 4.5%. And what some of these trends are telling us is that there are fewer opportunities for younger families and households within Buena Park. Next slide. We have another polling question. You guys ready? The question is, have you or a family experienced any of the following household challenges in the city? Choose all that apply. High costs, substandard housing. Was your housing in need of major repairs? Overcrowding, is that an issue? Discrimination. Have folks been denied housing due to race, color, family size, or other factors? And then other is another category. And we welcome your input during the breakout rooms if you want to expand on any answers you provide. So it looks like the clear forerunner here is the high cost of housing, where folks pay more than 30% of household income on their rent or mortgage. And other issues to consider are substandard housing and overcrowding. And another issue we'll find out more hopefully in our breakout rooms. And then discrimination is also an issue to consider. Great, thank you so much. This next question, which types of housing does Buena Park need the most? Please choose the top 3. So accessible housing for people with disabilities, accessory dwelling units for ADUs, also called granny flats. Those are becoming more popular these days. Affordable housing for lower income households, market rate housing, multifamily housing, homelessness support, shelters and or long-term supportive housing, transitional housing, single family housing, and of course, other is an option as well. Great, it looks like affordable housing for lower income households is an important issue for us to consider. Homelessness comes in second so far. Folks are still weighing in, good, great, great. Next, we see accessible housing for folks with disabilities, multi-rate housing, market rate housing, affordable dwelling units also are something we should be considering. And single family housing comes in as the lowest in the ranking so far. And then a little bit on other. Great, yeah, affordable housing for lower income households is a big challenge these days, an important issue to address. Thank you. So with this slide, we wanted to provide a little bit of background on the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, or RHNA, that you may have heard about. It's where each jurisdiction needs to demonstrate in its housing element that it can accommodate its total RENA number, the total regional housing needs assessment, and its allocations by income level. So it's not only the total number of units, but it's also broken out by those income levels we visited earlier: lower income, moderate, and above moderate. And the state determines the total housing need for California. Then it works with the regional housing agencies, in this case, the Southern California Association of Governments, or SCAG, which covers a 6-county area. And they've determined that there's about 1.3 million new residential housing units that we need to plan for over the next 8 years. Then that's further broken out by the 6 counties making up the SCAG region. And for Orange County, there's about 183,000 new dwelling units that need to be planned for over the next 8 years. And we wanted, and then it's further broken out by different cities within Orange County. And we wanted to provide a comparison to show what other jurisdictions, as well as what Buena Park's regional housing needs assessment target is for planning. Buena Park needs to plan for 8,919 dwelling units over the coming 8 years. Anaheim needs to plan for 17,000, about 17,500. Garden Grove also has a higher target of 19,000, a little over 19,000 dwelling units. Cypress is lower, a little under 4,000 units to plan for. Fullerton has a target of a little over 13,000, and then Santa Ana has a target of a little over 3,000 units. And those are as of the final allocation numbers as of March of this year. And we'll talk a little bit more of how this is broken out in the next couple of slides. Maybe we'll pause for a second for the interpreters to catch up, or if they need a moment. So on this slide, we break down that regional housing needs assessment, that 8,919 units that Buena Park needs to plan for. It's broken out by different income levels, as we discussed earlier. And I think this slide is interesting to show the 5th cycle, or the past 8 years, the housing element that addressed the past 8 years, 2014 through 2021, where the current cycle is addressing 2021 through 2029. And in the past cycle, it was a much lower number at 339 total units, where now we need to plan for 8,919, which is a pretty big difference. And it's going to be a challenging target to meet, but we're working on that and would love to hear from you as well. The interesting thing I think on this slide is that the percentages are very similar. For very low with the last cycle income category, there's about 22.42% of the dwelling unit allocation, and this time it's 23.76%. For low, it's a very similar number, both in the 15% range. Moderate, also about 17-18%. Above moderate is very similar. The last time is 43.66, and this time it's 43.55. And it's just a much bigger target to accomplish. Also on the slide, we mentioned what the Orange County average median income is, and that's $103,000 per year, and that's based on. And these income categories are based on a percentage, as shown earlier, on that average median income, AMI. Next slide. So this slide addresses what are the benefits of a diverse housing stock. Something that the housing element aims to do is to provide policies and supporting programs for a diverse housing stock. It provides housing for small and large families. It allows seniors to age in place, stay in communities where they have ties and other family members. It provides housing for special needs populations, for seniors, folks with disabilities, larger families, etc. It provides housing options for young adults to stay in the community instead of needing to move outside of Buena Park. And it allows more residents to live and work nearby as well. So those are some of the benefits of having a diverse housing stock. Thank you, Rachel. So how do we meet this regional housing needs assessment, the RHNA number of almost 9,000 units? And we wanted to spend a little bit of time during this presentation on what are the considerations for what are the strategies to reach that goal. And as part of this work effort, we need to, we're identifying and analyzing specific sites that are available and suitable for residential development. Things we need to look at are, does the zoning allow for a variety of multifamily housing types and densities? Are public facilities and services available? Are there environmental concerns that we should be considering? And is there sufficient capacity to address housing needs for all of the income levels to accommodate the RHNA allocation that's been established for Buena Park? And some of the strategic ways to approach this and strategic sources for selecting sites. One, we want to make sure that it's in alignment with the overall city vision for what is the city's vision for the future of the city. We can look at accessory dwelling units, which are also called granny flats. There's recent state legislation that makes those more accessible and streamline some of the processes. There are also redevelopment opportunities where some sites that might currently have some development but are underutilized or are good candidates for reinvestment for future development. Also looking at a hotel and motel overlay zone or potential, the potential for some of our existing hotels and motels to convert to residential uses. And also religious institution sites. There's recent state legislation that makes some of the churches and temples that may have additional area on their site and are interested in providing affordable housing that may align with their mission, that might be something to look at to provide additional housing opportunities. And it's really going to be a blending and a combination of many strategies in order to accomplish the housing capacity strategies we need to address this cycle. Next slide. So we've broken out the city for purposes of this presentation into two halves. This is the northern portion of the city, and we've identified some potential housing opportunity areas. There's Beach Boulevard North, the bubbled areas, Orange Thorpe Avenue, and also Whitaker Street are some of the main focus areas, although we are looking citywide at a lot of different pockets and opportunities that are outside these areas, but these are some of the focus areas that we are looking at for additional housing capacity and different strategies. Next slide. And so for the southern portion of the city, this which is depicted in this map, we're looking at the Buena Park Mall as a potential site, a lot of underutilized parking and transitioning that site to provide more housing opportunities. Crescent Avenue, Knott Avenue, also Lincoln Avenue and Ball Road are some focus areas that we're looking at to provide more, maybe looking at rezoning opportunities or underutilized sites. We want to also look at properties that are in proximity to supportive services such as groceries and personal services. So again, these are kind of the main focus areas, but there are other vacant sites, underutilized sites that we're looking at, and also the congregational sites as mentioned, and some of the hotel and motel sites as well. Next slide. So maybe we take just a beat, make sure our interpreters are having a breather. So this slide provides just an example of how we are approaching the site's inventory to look for housing opportunity sites to accommodate the regional housing needs assessment allocation. This particular site is a little over half an acre. It's located at 8750 Knott Avenue, and it's adjacent to Knott and Lincoln. There are services and parks and restaurants nearby. We look at site constraints. We consider this being a good potential candidate for a general plan rezone shopping or CS to residential mixed use. And so this is the type of thing that we're looking at throughout the city to see what sites might be good candidates for transitioning to a future residential capacity. A couple more polling questions. Where would you most like to see additional housing in Buena Park? Choose all that apply. Existing neighborhoods, along major streets, city-owned properties. There aren't a lot of city-owned properties, but there are some that could possibly accessory dwelling units or granny flats. Older shopping centers and retail areas. Along major streets, seems to be a forerunner so far. City-owned properties, older shopping centers and retail areas. Thank you everybody for participating. Good response, a couple more. Okay. So city-owned properties is make sure we look at those opportunities along major streets, older shopping centers and retail areas. Buena Park Mall might be falling into that category. And some of the corridor retail as well. Accessory dwelling units have some interest in pursuing that strategy. And also looking at existing neighborhoods where it makes sense. That's great. Well, thank you. We have a few slides regarding environmental justice. And as part of our work effort, we are updating the general plan as it relates to environmental justice goals, policies, and objectives. There's a Senate Bill 1000, that requires cities to update their general plans in this regard. And it needs to occur upon adoption or revision of 2 or more elements. And the city's also updating the safety element as a separate effort. And environmental justice goals and policies are intended to consider climate change and its effect on health, public safety, and or disproportionate impacts to certain communities. It looks at a number of factors: pollution, accessibility to healthy foods, among other factors. The state also has identified certain areas that meet different income categories and criteria. They have a disadvantaged communities database that needs to be considered as well. Next slide. So for environmental justice components, we need to identify disadvantaged communities. And the goal is to reduce unique or compounded health risks, layering of different environmental impacts to pockets within the community. It's to promote civic engagement, and it's also to result in some policies and recommendations and programs to prioritize improvements to these areas over time. Next slide. We have a couple more questions in this regard. This first question, there's 2 questions, and one are strengths and the other ones are challenges, and they're covering some of the same topics. So which of the following are strengths and assets in Buena Park? And choose your top 3. Is it racial and ethnic diversity? Is it economic diversity? Having low, middle, and high income folks? Is it language diversity? Local and small businesses, community-based organizations and leaders, social and community networks, immigrant resources and opportunities, youth resources and opportunities, senior resources and opportunities, and of course other, if there's another category that we haven't provided a category for. Nice, thank you, everybody. A little ways to go. So an asset, strength and asset in Buena Park is economic diversity, having a range of income levels represented. Racial and ethnic diversity is also a strength and asset. Local and small businesses, again, contribute to Buena Park. Language diversity, senior resources and opportunities contribute. Youth resources and opportunities as well. And community-based organizations and leaders are an asset. And then social and community networks are also identified. Great, thank you so much. So this question is similar, but it's really meant to gauge what are the barriers and inequities impacting Buena Park. And we ask that you choose your top 3. And they're similar, the same categories. And what are the challenges? What are the barriers and inequities? What are some things that need to be addressed to be improved? We have racial and ethnic diversity, economic diversity again, language diversity, local and small businesses, community-based organizations and leaders, social and community networks. Do those need to be improved? Immigrant resources and opportunities, youth resources and opportunities, and senior resources and opportunities. Any other takers? There might be a couple more. Thank you again for thinking through these questions, and I really appreciate your input. These 2 questions have a few more responses, so it takes a beat to sort it out a bit. I think it's at a resting point. Really appreciate your feedback. Economic diversity seems to be one of the top barriers and inequities in Buena Park. Also looking at community-based organizations and leaders for potential improvement, racial and ethnic diversity, immigrant resources and opportunities, youth resources and opportunities, language diversity. Not as high on the list, but still a consideration in local and small businesses, social and community networks as well, and other. We can hear more on that topic in our breakout rooms if anyone wants to amplify on that. And then senior resources and opportunities, maybe those are already pretty well taken care of. Great, thank you for your input. So we've come to the end of our presentation, and we wanted to note what are the next steps. We are proceeding with the site's inventory analysis. As we described earlier, we're drafting the housing element document that contains the housing programs, and then we'll be submitting it to the state Housing and Community Development Department for review, and we'll be receiving comments. It's about a 2-month process. And then we anticipate public hearings this fall, fall 2021. So thank you, everyone. We have our last slide here that provides the opportunity for this isn't the last opportunity for input, and we encourage you to email any questions or comments to housingelement2021@buenapark.com. And also, if you want to be on the list for any future notifications, that would be a good way to get your name on the notification list. And also, if you want to visit the city's webpage that has information, as well as we'll be posting other updates as we go along. And that information is provided on this slide. I feel at any time, feel free to reach out to Swati and she'll share information with our team, or if you have follow-up questions. So now we wanted to take a few minutes to break out into smaller groups, maybe about 10 minutes or so. It's not a hard and fast amount of time, but we wanted to ask a few questions to get the conversation started. But if you have other input on any of the topics that we addressed tonight that you'd like us to capture as part of the record for this meeting and to consider in this update process, we ask that you hang on for this next 10 minutes or so. And some of the questions that you can be thinking about, and we'd love to hear more, is what are the primary issues that we should be considering in the housing element update? Are there areas or sites that should be considered for future housing opportunities in the site's inventory analysis? And are there any other issues that we have not covered that are important for us to consider as part of this effort? So at this point, Rachel's going to help divide us into smaller groups, smaller rooms. We'll have a document on the screen and we'll be taking notes, taking down your comments and recording them as part of this meeting. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and I look forward to talking more directly with a few folks that end up in my room.
Thank you, Diane, and thank you, everyone. And please hang on, stay on as we move into a smaller meeting room so we can record your comments and feedback.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Swati. I'm going to